Good afternoon and welcome to the final session of ENG4E Term 2A, brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center. Today's date is Thursday, April the 13th, 2023, and today's date marks class 34 of our 34 classes together. So it is the last day, and we are looking at the final exam. So this is our third day of what I hope is going to be very useful time spent and getting you ready to write your final exam. So just want to talk about some key points about the final exam before we get into things. So it's very important to note that the final exam is, of course, completed only after you have finished all of the other coursework, right? So you only write this final exam after you've completed units 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you have to complete all of the key questions in those 4 units, and you also have to complete the culminating activities in those 4 units. And then once that's done, then you can arrange to write the final exam. And that final exam has to be arranged. Um, it has to be arranged with someone in your community. So that's typically going to be your DEC or your someone who works at the learning center who can be there while you write the final exam. And so this is known as that role is known as an invigilator or a proctor, and that proctor or invigilator will be with you in the room, and they will verify that you are in the room at a certain time and place. So that's really important. So that it has to be set up in advance. So it's a 2-hour timed exam, and then once you have completed the exam, then your invigilator or your proctor, whatever you want to call it, will forward that work to me. I'll mark it, and then after I grade it, I can calculate your final grade in the course. And then you will hopefully pass and get yourself a credit. So that's how that works, with the exception of the possibility of getting a course culminating activity, right? So if we can't arrange for someone to be in the office or be in the learning center with you, then you will be given a course culminating activity. So this won't be a timed exercise. It'll be something you complete on your own time. So the expectation there is that you can complete this thing in a few days and then get it back to your teacher. So it'll be similar questions to what you might see in the final exam, but again, you'll have more time to work on it, but it should take you longer than the 2-hour timed exam. Here are some important dates to keep in mind. We are on week 9 of Term 2A, so Term 2A is a 9-week term, which will be over at the end of this week. And that means, of course, that Term 2B is starting on Monday, April 17th, and that's the final term in the 2022-2023 WASA school year. And graduation day is June 15th, right? So once Term 2B is over, we have that graduation day of June 15th, which is coming up very soon. So just a little over 2 months from now. And it's really important to keep in mind that you can't transfer work from this year till next school year. So if you're working towards finishing off ENG4E, or if you're working on getting any other course done, then you've got to get all that coursework in now, right? So get that coursework in, get that credit, and if you've got any questions about this kind of thing, you need to reach out to someone and get some help, okay? And I'm gonna put the WASA contact information up on the screen and read it out on the airwaves. So just note that we have now covered all 4 units, and we had a very in-depth novel study, which I really enjoyed last week, and we are now looking at the final exam preparation. So final exam is worth 20% of your final grade. So it's the biggest chunk of your grade for a single thing that you have to do. And all of those units were covered in my previous classes. So we have 34 classes that were broadcast, and all of these these classes were broadcast live, but then they're later archived and put up on my YouTube channel. So I'll explain that in a second, right? So if you have any questions about the assignments in units 1, 2, 3, 4, or if you've got questions about the culminating activities, you can refer back to my YouTube videos, and you'll find that they're organized by playlist, and yeah, more on that in a second. So we were broadcasting live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 2 to 2:50 p.m. And even though today is the last broadcast, I just want to mention that if you register for classes in Term 2B, just note that when those classes broadcast live, you do have the option of phoning into the studio. The local number is 1-807-737-4017, and the toll-free long-distance number is 1-800-465-7144. And so that's if you're listening on 91.9 FM or Bell Express View channel 972. And most teachers also broadcast on Zoom. So if you want to, if you know the WASA schedule and you know the courses that are going to be broadcast in Term 2B, then you can get the Zoom link from the teacher, or looking in your study guide, or by sending a Facebook message to the WASA page, or sending a Facebook message to one of your teachers, right? So just pick, whatever contact you have with WASA, just follow that up and ask for help, and they'll show you how to set that up. Right, and so I mentioned that if you go to Laverty WASA, or first go to youtube.com or open up the YouTube app on your phone or device, type in Laverty space WASA, you will find my YouTube account, and all of the ENG4E classes are on there, and they're arranged by playlist. Unit 1, 2, 3, 4, and the novel study, and now the final exam. You can reach out to me directly. It's mlaverty@nnecschools.org. That's mlaverty@nnecschools.org. You can communicate with me through Facebook. So add me as a friend on Facebook, or just simply find me on Messenger, Laverty WASA. Phone the WASA office at 1-807-737-1488, or toll free at 1-800-667-3703. Phone the WASA office, especially if you need guidance on charting your path to graduation, finding out how you can watch and listen to the courses live, how you can participate, how you can communicate with your teacher, how you can get additional supports, how we can put courses onto a jump drive and send them up to you, right? So we are here to help, so just please reach out to the WASA staff. We are here to help you out and to make sure that you have the support that you need. I do have this suggested progress up on the screen, so if you've been doing this for about 8.5 weeks, then you should have read the study guide, units 1 through 4, should have read the entire novel, Where the Rivers Meet, should have completed all the assignments in units 1, 2, and 3, and you should be just finishing up assignment 4 now. So that, it just gives you a good idea of how long it's going to take you. There's 4 units in this course. Should take you about 2 weeks to get through a unit, and then study for the final exam. So it takes about 9 to 10 weeks to go through a course realistically, right? So now is the time for you to be honest with yourself and to just see how much time you have And if you can devote an hour every night, I think that should do it. If that seems unrealistic, then you may not have the time to finish a course, right? But if you have that time and you can sit down for an hour or so every night and work on your stuff, then it's for sure it's doable. And if you're having trouble getting started, please reach out now. I would love to get your call and give you a hand, okay? So here's today's lesson. We will look at an article from the Globe and Mail titled, "This First Nation Elder Created a Healing Center in Her Backyard." And we'll look at, we didn't have time yesterday, and I'm hoping we have a little bit of time today to look at editing paragraphs. So we've got some purposely misspelled words and grammatical mistakes and some other issues that are put into an article on purpose, and then our job is to go in there and fix them up. So if we have time after the article, I'd like to look at that. Your learning goals are to take notes as we do a close reading of an article, and I want you to practice your reading skills. So sizing up a text, understanding its context, its format, its purpose, its organization. What is it? How was it written? Who was it written for? Why did they write it? Where was it published? When was it published? Right? So these are all very important questions we can ask about a text, right? So that's where your reading skills come into place, right? You look at a text and you know what it is. You recognize its format. You recognize what it's for, who wrote it, how they wrote it, and you can talk about it intelligently using a whole bunch of criteria, right? And that's really what it's about, is you need to have ways of talking about it that go beyond just, saying, in the third paragraph they mentioned this, right? Well, why did they mention that? And what purpose does that paragraph serve, right? So it's just being able to analyze a text and talk about it intelligently. And then hopefully we're also going to talk about writing today, about how on the final exam you'll be given writing prompts. So you'll have to read something, or you'll be given an opinion on something, and then you, in response, do some writing. And again, if we have time, we will test our knowledge of grammar and the parts of speech and those kind of things. We'll test our editing skills together. And all of this, what we're hopefully trying to do today, and you'll know you're successful, is you are creating your own strategy. And that's really what I want to emphasize today. This is about you creating your strategy for writing this final exam. So, studying beforehand, reading through your assignments, going through and taking note of where you did well, going through and taking note of where you didn't do so well, right? So what am I doing well? What do I still need to work on? And then go into the final exam knowing that you have strengths and you have limitations, right? And just doing your best to work on those before it's time to write the thing. Practicing your skills, right? So you do that by watching this lecture, by actively listening, by looking through a newspaper, finding any material in your house and just practice reading it and just ask yourself those questions. Who wrote it? Why did they write it? How did they write it? And then having a mental strategy for going into that test, knowing that you've done the preparation and, practicing those techniques like taking a deep breath out, looking at the entire exam booklet before you write a single word, trying to plot your time out, telling yourself, like, look, I've got 2 hours to write this thing. There's 4 sections. Is each section equal, right? That kind of thing, right? So, how much time do I have to do this? If there's 4 parts and they're each worth 20 marks, then I can devote a half an hour to each one. But then where should I start? So for today's lecture, or for today's class, we're going to pretend that one of your exam, let's just say part 3 is about writing. And then you're given these writing prompts. So number one is you have to summarize the journey taken by Rita Fenton, which we'll meet in a second. So summarize her journey. And then we could say, you're asked to compare yourself to this elder. How are you similar to her? And how are you different? And we can ask ourselves, an opinion question is, do you think, and then you'll learn what this is in a second, do you think, quote, the healing place will be successful? Why or why not? So you've decided to write about this article. So again, like we're sort of doing like a simulation or a scenario, and I want you to imagine that you're writing your final exam, and you see that part 3 is asking you to do some writing, and before you do some writing, you have to read an article, right? So that's what I would strongly suggest that you do, is that you find one question or one part of the exam that sort of speaks to you, that you believe you will do well on. Just whatever one gets your attention and you're like, yeah, that one. I'm going to start with this one. I think it's really important to get off on a solid foot. Put your best foot forward. Get things rolling. Get some confidence, and that's going to lead to the rest of the rest of your work, right? So you can always change your mind and go back to a different part of the exam if you want. But I would find one that sort of speaks to you and jump in. So let's just say, hypothetically, you're sitting down to write your ENG4E final exam, and you're like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this part 3 writing. So what I suggest to you to do is I would like you to read the questions first, right? So I think that's really important to do. Read the questions before you read the text itself. So have those prompts first and foremost in your mind, and just and then you can make some notes as you go along. So we have to summarize her journey. We have to summarize the journey of this elder, Rita Fenton. We are comparing ourselves to this elder, how we're similar, how we're different. And we're thinking about the healing place, and answering the question, will it be successful or not? All right, so with that in mind, we will pull up this article. Give me one moment, please. All right, so I think it's important to just pay attention to some of the larger picture things. So before we get down to looking at this on a sentence by sentence or paragraph by paragraph level, it's important to just take stock of the article and identify some of the things we talked about in our previous classes, like the format. So this is a news report / article. Whoops, spelled article wrong. It's nonfiction. Yeah, so it's a news report or a news article. It's nonfiction, and I would say it's what we call a human interest story. So newspapers love to run these kinds of articles. They're very popular with readers. So instead of writing about an event or something that happened or something that's going to happen, well, I guess in this case something did happen, but it's really, it's really like a story about a human being. So similar to the Tom Green article, where it's kind of like it shares some of the features with like a biography or a memoir, but you're telling a story about someone's life, and maybe not the entire story, but at least one part of it. And so it's a Globe and Mail article published January 14th, 2023, and it was written by Willow Fiddler. So she's the author. A very popular journalist operating out of Thunder Bay. Someone who's got some roots, not roots anyways, but some connections to Sioux Lookout and the surrounding area. So she's a very successful journalist. And then we've also got many photographs that were taken by Willow, and they're included throughout the article. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the article, and I'm going to take note of the paragraphs and just anything else that sort of catches my attention. So the article's headline is, "This First Nation elder created a healing center in her backyard," right? So I think that's really important, right? So it's about a First Nation elder. That's the subject of the article. So is it about her or is it about her lodge? It's about both, right? But I think primarily it's about her, right? So it's about what she did, right? So the caption reads, Elder Rita Fenton from Fort William First Nation runs a private counseling practice from her home that she has turned into the healing place. It includes a 26-foot teepee recently erected in her backyard, underneath the majestic ENG4E, or Mount McKay. Alright, so I'm just going to go P1 for paragraph 1, P2 for paragraph 2, and so on. Paragraph 1. The day after the November 5th grand opening of a 26-foot teepee in Rita Fenton's backyard in Fort William First Nation, a family of 8 showed up to her door looking to have a sacred fire for family members who had recently passed. She, quote, "There's wood there, there's chairs inside," she told them. "Just have the fire and stay as long as you want." So that's a great introduction. That's and it's similar to kind of what we looked at yesterday with the Tom Green article, where instead of saying, this is an article about Rita Fenton, it just sort of opens with like a scene, right? So you picture this elder, this massive 26-foot teepee, and this family of 8 who are mourning for their recently departed family members, and she welcomes them in and says, just come inside and stay as long as you want. The teepee is the latest addition to Miss Fenton's house, located south of Thunder Bay, which the elder calls the healing place, and which is a literal dream come true. She describes it in her dream journal 10 years ago. Quote, it says, "I'm living in this big house. A lot of people are coming to it, and it's called the healing place," she said from her home, which sits below the majestic ENG4E, the Anishinaabe name for Mount McKay. On a technical point, you notice that when you quote a quote so you're quoting someone, and you're quoting them quoting something else. So it's like these quotes within quotes. So she's quoting her dream journal, right? So that's why you have to You open the quote with a double quotation mark, and then the single quotation mark notes, what's in the dream journal, right? So when she says, I'm living in this big house, a lot of people are coming to it, and it's called the healing place. That was in the dream journal. And then the second double quotation mark sort of ends that main quote from this elder. Paragraph 5. When she bought the house in 2019, Miss Fenton said it was run down with holes punched in the walls. She spent months cleaning it up. I turned it into a healing place, she said, describing how she replaced one of the bedroom's windows with a sliding door that opens to a deck overlooking ENG4E's peak. It's very sacred, and it's powerful, and it's strong because it's rock, the grandfather and our ancestors, she said. There's many teachings and many stories about ENG4E, and to have it in my backyard, it's just like I'm blessed. Creator brought me here. In that room for the last 3 years, she has run her private counseling practice after she relocated from downtown Thunder Bay. So she's a counselor or a therapist, and she runs this private practice, which means that people pay for her services. They come to her and as a healer or a therapist, counselor, and they pay for that service. But I think that the healing place, the TP, and the space she has outside, I believe that she's not charging money for that, and that's like a free service that she's offering to her community. There's another great photograph, which just really illustrates the size of this TP. It's massive. It's really big, and you can fit a lot of people inside of it. So there's a great photograph of Rita Fenton inside the TP. I'm reading the caption now, where individuals and families are welcome to hold sacred fires or just sit in a safe place for grief and loss. She also hosts full moon ceremonies here. Photo credit, Willow Fiddler, the Globe and Mail. Okay, what was I on? Paragraph 7, so paragraph 8. Miss Fenton ordered the healing place's new teepee from the United States, and its $10,000 price tag was paid for through donations. Her nephew Doug Little painted it with images of an eagle, a turtle, a man, and a woman wearing a rainbow ribbon skirt. Miss Fenton hopes the healing place will be permanent and accessible at all times. She's working on getting a website up to book use of the teepee and secure funds to keep the fire going and offer more traditional teachings with elders and other knowledge keepers. In the meantime, she plans to use it for the full moon ceremony she's hosted for the last 20 years. Instead of cramming up to 30 women into her living room, they will gather around the orange glow of the fire that lights up the teepee under the night sky. With a master's degree in social work, earned in 2017 when she was 69 years old, and as a survivor of Indian Day School and her counseling, Mrs. Fenton provides mental health support for survivors of residential schools, as well as those suffering from trauma, grief, and loss. She traveled to Edmonton this past summer to support residential school survivors during the papal visit, which is, of course, when the Pope visited Canada. It's always been a part of my life because I watched my parents, how they were always helping people, she said. Paragraph 13. Miss Fenton said her own journey of health and wellness began after hitting rock bottom as a young mother with addictions. Finding strength in her Anishinaabe spirit name, Eagle Woman, she started to learn about her own history and how to follow the traditional role of living a good life, called, quote, the Red Road, in her culture. Going back to university as a mature student also opened doors. There's a really kind of stunning photograph of Rita Fenton standing in front of the teepee as she's clearing snow off of it, and we can see Akemi, I'm forgetting the, I'm going to go back just to make sure I get that right. ENG4E. So she's standing in front of that mountain. Um, what were we on? Paragraph 13. So paragraph 14 reads, a lot of uncovering of my mind, decolonizing my mind from Christianity, from colonization, she said. Learning about our history to a deeper level, and looking at and seeing how resilient my ancestors were and how strong they were, and the stuff that they must have gone through and lived through. It was a lot of healing, inner healing. With the rise in addictions, mental health crises, and family violence during the pandemic, Ms. Fenton believes it's more important than ever to have support systems in place for those affected. The rates of accidental opioid overdoses in Northern Ontario over the last few years were almost 3 times higher than southern regions of the province, according to a report co-authored by the Ontario Drug Policy Research Network, ICES, the Office of the Chief Coroner for Ontario, and Public Health Ontario. Another report, released in November by the Chiefs of Ontario and the Ontario Drug Policy Research Network, found the illicit overdose death rate for Indigenous peoples doubled during the first year of the pandemic. There were 116 Indigenous opioid poisoning deaths between March 2020 and March 2021, a 132% increase from the previous year, while the rest of Ontario's population saw a 68% increase. While there are other teepees in the city, they're not easily accessible or are only available at limited times, Ms. Fenton said. She hopes that hers can be a place of healing for all those who could use help. Quote, I saw the need a long time ago, she said. The need for people to have a place to come to, just to sit if they want, to sit in there and just be. That's a very nice way to end the article. Sort of kind of encapsulates and talks about her motivation and what she wants. And so that was paragraph 19. And I also want to mention that you may or may not have heard this advice where a paragraph has to be 3 to 5 sentences long, and usually they are, but you'll note that this article it has many paragraphs in it, 19 in total, and they're written very short. They're very short, and they have like sometimes just one sentence or 2 sentences, so they're very short and punchy. And this is very common practice with what you see. This is kind of what you typically would see in an online newspaper article, and then I think when articles began to be read online and when articles began to be published on phones and laptops, I think they would add more white space and they would make for shorter paragraphs. And online writing typically has shorter paragraphs and lots of space between the paragraphs, and everything's sort of very visually appealing because you're not confined to the page. And then I think with a traditional newspaper, like a printed newspaper, you were kind of more forced to kind of cram things together. And so we can look at how this, if we go back to the start of the article, it's a news report, it's an article, it's nonfiction, it's a human interest story, and then we can sort of talk about how the article was written. And so actually I'm going to do that now. I'll open up my notebook. I'll go back to our slide deck here. Whoops. That's not what I want. I want ENG4E. Alright, so we can open up our right, so we were asked to take on these 3 assignments. So these 3 writing prompts to summarize the journey taken by Rita Fenton, compare yourself to this elder, how are you similar, how are you different, and do you think the healing place will be successful. Why or why not? So with that in mind, what I would suggest doing is to just jot down some notes, right? So, and what we're doing here is we're doing like an outline, right? An outline for the article, just sort of break it down. Let's see, and just jotting down. You've got 19 paragraphs to reference and cite. So that helps. That helps if you can just number the paragraphs and just use that as your reference. So in paragraph 17, Miss Fenton talks about this. And it just sort of, and then it just sort of lets you know where something is, and it just helps you find it easily, especially if you're writing a final exam and you're crunched for time. So 19 paragraphs to reference and cite. I would say, you know, how article is organized / its content. So what we're dealing with here, and this is, you know, you need to pull content from this article. You know, we have many direct quotes from the elder, right? So when you write your response, you are going to be pulling stuff from the text and referencing it and bringing it up and sharing it with your teacher, right? So you're going to be looking at the many direct quotes from Rita Fenton. We have descriptions of her home and the quote healing place, right? So we have all those descriptions of what her home looks like. You know, Mount McKay in the background, and this healing place that she's developed. We have stats and important info that Willow Fiddler included about addictions and healing. So you might want to pull that, right? And then we also have details. We have details about Rita Fenton's life. And that, I guess that's we're talking like past, present, and future too, right? What she's done in the past, what led her here, what she's doing right now, and what she will most likely do in the future, right? So you've got so you've just kind of broken down what the article is, its format, how it's organized, and the kind of things that are in it, right? And so this is all very useful. It's very good. You could use that. So when you summarize the journey, you can say, you know, the journey is told through these methods, and you know, it's just good to know what you're working with, okay? And if we go back to these questions, so summarize the journey taken by Rita Fenton, right? So you have to identify, you know, what is her journey, and her journey is to build this healing lodge. You know, that's the journey she took. So if you do that option, I would go ahead and, you know, do like a rough timeline. So, you know, just jot down some key dates, right? So that's what I would do there. You know, if we're gonna summarize her journey, you know, I would do point form with dates if you can, or in order, right? So you've got her suffering from addictions. You've got her, she had that dream, like a literal dream that she had. You've got her getting a degree in social work at 69. And then you've got her, securing donations, setting up her TP, and then, of course, welcoming people. All right, so I've got those points, and then I'm going to turn each one into a sentence. And then once I've done that, I will have a very good summary of her journey. If I'm answering questions like, or if I'm being told to write, compare yourself to this elder, how are you similar? How are you different? My main piece of advice for you in this situation is you might wanna jot down a list of things that you have in common with this woman, and jot down a bunch of differences you have with her, and then you might want to just pick one or two that you think are the most important, and then maybe more importantly, given your time constraint, just which one of those similarities or differences can you write about, and which one can you generate the most details about, right? Because I think that's it's what you want to avoid is just giving a big list of things and then not explaining it, right? Like you could say we both went on a healing journey. We both live in Thunder Bay. We both, right? You could list all those things, and that's great, but you want to find the key similarities and find the key differences and pick one or two of them, and then just elaborate and provide as much detail and as much information as you can about those similarities or those differences, right? So what we're really doing here is we're practicing the writing process, and I know that for some people this could be hard, especially if they're doing a timed test, but you do need to outline it and just plan it out and give yourself a roadmap. And then that way, even if you switch gears and go on to a different assignment, for example, then you still have that outline to come back and refer to. You still have something to focus your thoughts, to keep yourself moving in the right direction, because that's very important, right? You do have to keep that in mind, and it's good to have an outline to guide your thinking. And even if you spend like 2 minutes just doing a list, and then just pick the best thing off that list, that's time well spent. That last one, do you think the healing place will be successful? Why or why not? So in these kinds of questions, you're being asked to provide an opinion. And like they say, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and we all have one. But the opinions, I guess, that matter, and the opinions that other people pay attention to, right? Because if you don't want to share your opinion with anybody, then it doesn't really matter. You can believe whatever you want to believe, and it doesn't have any consequences. But if you want other people to know about your opinion, and if those people matter to you, or if they're your teacher, and you're trying to prove your communication skills, then you need to present an argument that that makes a case and demonstrates how you are right. And so you're going to need at least 2 or 3 Well, I mean, if you can think of one or two really good reasons why you think this thing's going to be successful, or maybe why you think it won't be successful, um, that's great. You just need to talk about it at length and provide details about it, and lead with your strongest argument, and sort of go from there. And you have to rely upon the text as much as possible, right? So you know, that's sort of like my closing message for you here is that I think too often what happens is you you read the article, and then the article makes you think of other stuff, and then you're bringing in lots of outside information, which is great. If you can make connections to the outside world, and if you can compare this elder to a different elder, or compare her healing place to another healing place, that's awesome. But you really want to ground your discussion in the article itself. You want to quote from the article itself. You want to mention specific passages. You want to underline things that she said, um, things that stand out in your mind, things that you can talk about in the article, in your response to the text, right? So I think that's a really important consideration to keep in mind. Just you're always referring back to it, and just saying, this is what I believe, and like for example, a question about will it be successful. You might want to mention some of those alarming stats that Willow Fiddler brought up, and it's like, you know what, I think she'll be successful if she kind of gets the help she needs and she promotes it, and if people know about it, right? So you could write it that way, right? And so you could say, you know what, like, obviously there's a need for this healing place. People need it. There's it's gonna fill a gap. It's gonna help people. But only if she does these things, and only, and then so that kind of thing, right? Or maybe you could write about it. Yeah, you could do like a hypothetical, right? Like it might not be successful if people don't know about it, or if she doesn't get assistance, or if she can't secure the funding for, getting the wood, and keeping keeping those sacred fires burning. But it all comes down to like an argument that you're gonna make. Either one way or the other, right? And so you have to state your argument. So that's step one is you make a statement, and you say, Miss Fenton's initiative, the healing place, is going to have a long-standing impact on the people of Thunder Bay and their surrounding areas. She'll be successful because there's a great need. There's a great need for this service. She's the right person to do it, and it's in such a beautiful, stunning location that people will just want to go to, right? So you give your reasons, and then you wanna kind of devote a sentence or two to each of your reasons after that. So you make your statement, back up that statement with your three, or your one to two of your best reasons, and then you elaborate, you expand upon that information, you tell the reader exactly what you mean. So you expand upon the things that you brought up. And yeah, I believe that's pretty much everything I can say about that. Just wanna thank everybody for tuning in to ENG4E, and want to wish you the best of luck on this class and any other class you may take with WASA, or any other class you may take in your future. I wish you all the best, and please reach out to me if you've got any questions. Stay safe and good luck.